So good morning and welcome to this webinar on the Bristol Avon Catchment Market. My name is Claire Jacob and I'm Communications and Partnership Manager for Bristol Green Capital Partnership. As you all have noticed, we're using Zoom webinar today, which means you won't be able to see everyone's faces who's joined us today, but it would be lovely if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, and please also post any reflections or any questions. And if these questions can't be answered today, we'll be sure to pass them on and hope to get back to you. For those of you who don't know us, Bristol Green Capital Partnership is a network of over 1,000 organisations working together for a fast and fair response to the climate and nature crises. Part of what we do is promote and share initiatives that organisations can get involved with to support and accelerate their own and the region's climate and nature ambitions. So I'm really pleased we're able to host this webinar today about the Bristol Avon Catchment Market, which just seems a really, really exciting approach, which will hopefully bring long-term positive change to the area. Before we get started, I just wanted to highlight another event we have coming up that we just opened for bookings today, which is focused on donut economics and how this can apply to your organisation. So that's going to happen on the 13th of June, and in a sec, I'll post a link to that in the chat, so do have a look. Okay, so for now, I'm going to hand over to Ian and Amy from Avon Wildlife Trust, who are going to guide you through today. Avon Wildlife Trust are one of the delivery partners for the market, and so they can explain more and let you know how your organisation can get involved. So over to Ian.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everybody. It's one of those weird situations of a webinar where I can't see who's in the audience, so hi everyone. Amy, are you going to share these slides? Brilliant, thank you. So the Bristol Avon Catchment Market is designed to help organisations achieve your environmental goals and to help to restore habitats and ecosystems across the west of England. So if we go on to the next slide, Amy, we've done a lot of work around the ecological emergency in Bristol, looking at the collapse of wildlife which is going on worldwide, but also nationally and locally in the Bristol Avon area, where we know, for instance, we've lost 96% of our swifts and starlings since the 1990s. So we are seeing wildlife declining at accelerating and unprecedented rates. We're seeing insect declines, insect populations declining, which has big implications for pollination, food supplies, and just generally the ecosystems that we depend on for clean air and clean water and supply chains, a whole range of other things are under threat. So in view of that, we've worked with Bristol City Council and other authorities in the west of England to declare ecological and nature emergencies and really put in place the things we need to do to tackle those problems. So across the Bristol Avon, we know we've got problems not just with reduced nature, habitat and wildlife, but high nutrient levels, flooding, and we know that we've got lots of housing coming through, so we'll need to look at how we can both offset the impacts of that or minimize the impacts of that, but also look at how we can use some of the money that's coming to the area to help to restore those ecosystems. So next slide, please, Amy. So the Bristol Avon Catchment Market is designed to bring together those landowners who've got the potential to create new habitats on their land with companies and organisations who are looking to invest in those improvements. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those are in a couple of slides' time. So there's a whole range of reasons why businesses might want to get involved in taking action for nature. So I know that there's a lot of organisations in Bristol are members of the Green Capital Partnership. We've got over 1,000 organisations in the partnership and really keen to show that leadership in taking action for nature. There are increasing requirements to comply with regulatory and planning requirements, meeting consumer and employee expectations. So we already know that a lot of organisations have to report on carbon and carbon footprint, and increasingly we're seeing in procurement and other areas companies asking other companies to show what they're doing to reduce their ecological footprint. So there's a whole range of benefits for companies in taking action for wildlife. And there are also policy drivers, some of which I've probably just mentioned. So the financial disclosures for new development, there will be a requirement to achieve biodiversity net gain. So not just making sure that that new housing and other developments are not causing impacts on wildlife, but they're actually putting back more than they're putting in. On carbon, we know coming out of the COP and other climate change meetings, so there are increasing expectations on companies to be setting science-based targets and reducing their emissions down to net zero. And on nutrients, in many parts of the country, you're already not allowed to build houses unless you are neutral in how much nutrient you're putting into waterways, and we're expecting to see that coming through more. So there are all kinds of policy and regulatory drivers for taking action for wildlife. So the Bristol Avon Catchment Market is looking to provide a way that companies can invest in habitats across the west of England to help to develop our nature recovery network, to bring wildlife back, to restore ecosystems, but also to meet some of those drivers that we've just been talking about and some of the things that you want to achieve as organisations. So we're looking to restore 58 hectares of grassland, plant 85 hectares of new woodland, and create 5 hectares of wetland. So this map here shows the Bristol Avon catchment. This is the watershed, but all of the rivers in that area lead into the Bristol Avon or directly out into the Severn. So this includes a big part of West Wiltshire, as well as the west of England, and small parts of Somerset to the south and Gloucestershire to the north. And the green areas are the pilot areas we're working in, looking at developing projects. Those are our focus areas. That's not to say we won't look at doing projects in South Gloucestershire and Bristol and other parts of the area as well. I think, am I handing over to you now, Amy?
Yes, thank you, Ian. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of markets in driving investment in nature and how the Bristol Avon Catchment Market operates. So the work that we've been doing on setting up the Bristol Avon Catchment Market, that's been based on work that's been done over the last couple of years by the Broadway Initiative, Green Finance Institute and Finance Earth, looking at really driving investment in nature and making sure that there's sufficient funding to halt nature's decline, because we know that public funding alone won't be sufficient for the scale of the task ahead of us in tackling both the climate crisis and the ecological emergency. So we know that we need to direct as much funding as possible to halting nature's decline, and we need to do that as efficiently and effective as possible. So markets are needed to really attract that private investment and to do that effectively. And for these markets to be run efficiently and for them to be really, really high integrity, the work that's been done by the Broadway Initiative, Green Finance Institute and Finance Earth has identified some key things that can be developed to underpin those markets. So actually you need really good market design. You need to have the policy frameworks that inform that market design, alongside incentives and regulation to drive those markets, and the right institutional architecture around that. And that then enables markets to meet the needs around corporate disclosures and voluntary commitments. Then need really strong market governance. So you need clear standards, you need accreditation processes, and monitoring and verification and compliance methodologies, but you also need that to be underpinned by really good data. And in terms of market operation, for those markets to operate in a way that's really, like I said, high integrity, you need to have clear market rules so that everybody knows how they're expected to participate in that market and what's expected of them. You need to have all that market infrastructure in place and really good contracts to contract any agreements on both buyer and seller sides of things. And those markets work most effectively when they're focused on local delivery. So that's why the scale of the market that we're operating is at catchment level. We felt that geographically, ecologically, and from a market perspective, that was the best way to operate. So in terms of people that can participate in the market, the projects that we're developing for nature's recovery will all be within the Bristol Avon catchment. And as Ian said, we've got focus areas, but they're not the only place that we're delivering those projects. In terms of buyers who can buy environmental services from the market, that's actually a wider spread and isn't necessarily constrained geographically. But we do particularly want to have local investors in the local market. But investment is invited from outside of the catchment as well. So that could be for biodiversity gain, that's only England wide, but for carbon and other biodiversity gain credits, that could be wider than England. So I'll give a quick overview of what a catchment market is and how the Bristol Avon Catchment Market will operate. So in its simplest terms, a catchment market is an online marketplace where landholders can sell nature-based projects and businesses can buy the environmental services from these projects. So in the middle, you have a catchment market operator that services both sides of the market. So the area of this particular, the Bristol Avon Catchment Market, that the Wildlife Trusts are particularly interested in is the development of really high value nature-based projects with third-party landowners. So they might be farmers or other landowners, potentially even local authority landowners, and also wildlife trusts and other NGOs who own land who might be doing projects. And then those projects supply environmental credits through the catchment market operator. So those environmental credits that we're looking to sell to buyers on the other side are for carbon sequestration, habitat for wildlife, water pollution reduction, and flood mitigation. So like I said, the projects that we're working up with landholders, those are local, they're high impact, and they will be verified using best possible local data and our scientific expertise within the Wildlife Trust, but also the best available standards. And the market itself, we've been working really hard to develop a mechanism that's high integrity, fair, and very user-friendly. So we're making it easy for businesses to meet their environmental commitments. So it's very much a market that you can trust. We're delivering real change, so we're only supporting projects that deliver strategic environmental benefits to the Bristol Avon catchment and that meet government endorsed accreditation standards. And you know that you'll be paying a fair price for the environmental services that are being delivered because it's been designed in collaboration with experts at Exeter University. We have a particular settlement mechanism, which I'll talk about later, which ensures both a fair price for landholders but also for businesses buying those environmental credits. And the Bristol Avon Catchment Market locks in the benefits long term. So we will have in place watertight contracts with the project suppliers that ensure that projects are maintained throughout the lifetime of those agreements. So you know that those will be high quality, and those agreements will be available to be viewed on the website before the market round is run, so that you know exactly what you're signing up to before you participate. And as a market, it's really important that we are encouraging businesses to meet our ethical standards, and businesses need to meet those ethical standards to participate in the market. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on, but it includes a firm commitment to use credits purchased through the Bristol Avon Catchment Market to drive genuine environmental improvements. The Bristol Avon Catchment Market is being delivered by a very powerful collaboration between two wildlife trusts, so Avon Wildlife Trust and Wiltshire Wildlife Trust, who have a long history of delivering successful nature-based projects and developing those, and Entrade, who have been operating environmental services markets over a number of years now and have already established over 30 marketplaces for different environmental services. So it's really important that we combine the expertise of the different organisations involved in it, and we're both all learning from each other as we go through this project. And we've been backed by government, national government, through the Green Recovery Challenge Fund to do this. So we received the third largest grant under the second round of the Green Recovery Challenge Fund in England, and we are supported by our government partners, so Natural England, Environment Agency and DEFRA, as well as the National Heritage Lottery Fund. So they work to support us through developing the Bristol Avon Catchment Market. So how does the market actually run and work? So we have a process that you will follow if you want to participate in the market, starting with the expression of interest. So that's a non-binding process, at which point you can indicate that you would like to participate in the market as either a buyer or seller. If you are a buyer participating in the market, there's then an ethical buyer test, although we do also look at our sellers in quite a lot of depth to make sure that they are good landholders who don't have any particular compliance issues on their land. So they need to be delivering good quality habitat management as well. We then run a market round where we bring together both the buyers and sellers, and part of that process is the settlement process designed by Exeter University. And then once the market is settled, we enter the contracting and delivery phase when everybody signs up to their agreements, either to purchase environmental services or deliver a nature-based project. I'll go through each of those steps in a little bit more detail now. So the expression of interest, this is the phase that we're in now, and it is open on our website. And I will make sure that I put a link to the website in the chat before we finish. And that expression of interest phase is open to businesses now until Monday, the 20th of June, when it will close at 5 o'clock. And then once all the expressions of interest in, our team will pick up those expressions of interest and contact those businesses directly to discuss the next steps. But essentially, this expression of interest phase provides businesses with the opportunity to discuss their environmental goals with our team and explore exactly how the market can meet their needs. So you can express an interest in purchasing credits, both type and quantity, through this process. And it's fairly basic information we're asking for at this stage. And really important to know that the expression of interest is not a binding commitment to participate in the market. It's just indicating that you would like to know more and consider participating. And it's really important that, that you do complete that if you think you might want to be involved. So following the expression of interest, we then put all of our potential buyers of environmental services through an ethical buyer test. And it's really important that all buyers can demonstrate that they're genuinely committed to supporting nature's recovery. So demonstrating that they're committed to improving their ecological footprint over time, that they intend to use the credits purchased through the market to drive genuine environmental improvements, and that they're not proposing to resell those credits. We also ask that all of our buyers sign up to say that they're not participating in any excluded activities. So particularly on the ecological side, that's fossil fuel extraction or global deforestation, manufacturing pesticides, insecticides, and genetically modified crops, but also the destruction of irreplaceable habitat or land designated for the purposes of nature conservation. And then there are various other excluded activities that businesses can't be participating in around terrorism and so on. And included in that ethical buyer test, we are asking you to let us know what your environmental commitments are, what commitments you have made to achieving net zero, for example, and demonstrating that you've got a credible plan to get to that point. And we want to see buyers coming to the market either signed up to the Science Based Targets Initiative or something similar, and to be really working hard to achieve their net zero target by reducing emissions as well as offsetting. And on the biodiversity side, if buyers are looking to purchase biodiversity gain or nutrient mitigation credits, they need to demonstrate that that their proposals are part of local plans or have already got some degree of approval, so we know that they're ready to buy their credits, but also demonstrating that the development that's going to be occurring won't result in any loss of irreplaceable habitat or direct loss of designated sites, well, sites that are designated for the purposes of nature conservation. So those are our ethical buyer tests. They're really important to us. If you've got any questions about those, please do pop it in the chat or let Ian and I know, and we're happy to answer questions on that. So once you've expressed an interest, you've had a good discussion with us about what your needs are as a buyer, then you can register for our market round. And at this point, you are letting us know exactly what environmental credits you need and how much you're looking to pay to secure those. So we don't set the prices, the market sets the prices, and you set your own price for the credits that you want to purchase. In the same way, project suppliers submit their offers for their nature-based projects, and they set their prices for how much they're looking for to deliver those projects. Neither side of the market sees the price that the other has put forwards, and the catchment market operator makes the deals between those two sides of the market. If your price meets a project supplier's price, then you'll be matched with that project supplier if your needs also match what they're selling in terms of credits and projects. Then you'll be matched with that seller. It might be that your needs for credits are much higher than one project can supply, so you may be matched with multiple projects, or you may be matched with part of a project, and that project may sell to multiple buyers if they're generating large numbers of credits. So you put your bid forwards. If your bid's not high enough, you won't be matched. And I will talk a little bit more about then how that settles between the two project buyers and, project sellers and credit buyers if your bid actually exceeds what the project supplier is looking for and there's a surplus. Really important slide, this one, just to remind you that we can spot if there is any anti-competitive behavior in the market. So if buyers or sellers are talking to one another about how they're pricing things, we can see if there's any collusion, and it's really important that there isn't any, and that that's why the bid price is the price that you're putting forwards for your environmental services is done by each individual participant and is done at the market round stage. So in terms of settling the market, the settlement mechanism that we use that matches up buyers and sellers and ensures a fair price has been developed by independent experts from Exeter University in their Land, Environment, Economics and Policy Institute, and it's called the Lindsay mechanism. There is a video available for this, which could be shared afterwards. And this process is really important. It determines the combination of offers and bids that most effectively and efficiently matches project supply with demand for each credit type. And it also then allocates any surplus from those trades fairly. So if as an environmental credit buyer, you bid more than the project is going to cost, then between you as the buyer and the seller, that surplus that's generated is shared between you. This means that you will always pay no more than you've bid for your environmental services, and you may receive back some of the surplus, which may mean that you pay less. So it's really important to think about the prices that you're submitting. So yes, so successful buyers will pay no more than the amount they've bid. So once buyers and sellers have been matched by the catchment market operator through the market round, then credit buyers will enter into an environmental credit supply agreement with the market operator, which is Entrade in this case. So your agreement won't be direct with the Wildlife Trust, it will actually be with Entrade. And that environmental credit service supply agreement will cover type and quantity of credits, the delivery dates and the payment schedule. And that agreement will be published on the website ahead of the market round. So next steps, so I recommend that you all take a look at our website, which we'll put in the chat. And like I said, take a look at the expression of interest round that's running at the moment. This is just a timeline that just sets out the likely operation of timings for the operation of the market. So actually the expression of interest for buyers is running until June. The expression of interest for the first round of projects has just ended, but we think it's likely that we'll be running a second one as we start to see what types of projects have come through and what types of credits buyers are looking for. The actual market round, we're not expecting that to run until late August, early September. So then that would mean that credit agreements would be entered in the autumn. So if you've got environmental goals that you're looking to meet, now is the time to talk to us. So if you want further information, like I said, take a look at our website or get in touch with us if you would like a more detailed conversation with either myself or Ian. I'll hand back to Ian just to round up.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so just to finish off, really, for us as Avon Wildlife Trust, the ecological emergency is absolutely our focus, and also the climate emergency with the impacts that will have on people and on wildlife. And this, the reason we're getting involved in this is because this provides a tool for bringing in some of that investment which is out there ready to invest in nature and climate solutions into creating those habitats that we need to bring wildlife back and really get things working well. So we are looking for people to join us at this pilot stage, to be expressing interest in buying credits or to be doing projects, to really start to show how these things can work on the ground. So we don't know how big the interest will be this summer. Please do get in touch with the team and talk to them about what we're doing. But this is a key part of how we want to do things in coming years to get that investment coming through to fix our environment. Thank you.
Claire, we've got some questions in the chat. Would you like us to answer those?
Yeah, sure. I've made a note of them. So I can start with the order they came in. And yeah, obviously either if you're able to answer them now, that's brilliant, or we can sort of take them away and get back to the people who've asked them. So the first question from Anne asked a couple of questions to start off with. The first one was, what can we do to stop urban biodiversity outsourcing, or I guess being outsourced by developers, i.e. taking biodiversity out of the cities that need it? And maybe I'll just pose her second question as well, was how can small-scale community organisations get involved?
Should I take the first one, Amy?
Yep, you take the first one, I'll take the second one.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really important in all of this that we will be following the mitigation hierarchy. So the first thing that we want developers to do is not cause any impact on wildlife and ecosystems. If the development is, the first thing that they need to look at is keeping that habitat, that wildlife value within the footprint of the site overall. And it's only where they can't do that, or where doing that would be suboptimal, that we'll look at having off-site mitigation. So for us, this is part of delivering our nature recovery network, and the nature recovery network works at several levels. So across the whole of the west of England, we know where the important wildlife corridors are, and we know where some of the gaps are. So from that point of view, if we're able to take contributions from several developments and put really good big habitats in some of those gaps to complete the nature recovery network, that would be really helpful. And as well as the West of England level, we're also working very closely with Bristol City Council on the Nature Recovery Network of Bristol, which is why we've got involved in campaigns like stopping development on the Western Slopes, And so we need to make sure that we are not just moving biodiversity from one place to another, but we're really strengthening those ecological networks that we need to bring wildlife back.
Thanks, Ian. And I think it's important to note that we're also talking to Bristol City Council about how the catchment market operates in that more urban context as well, and having some really good conversations with them to make sure that we're addressing that. In terms of small-scale community organisations getting involved, that depends on what type of organisation they are, whether they have any land. So if you're talking about small community organisations that are maybe managing land for nature, then actually the catchment market is a good way to potentially generate income to support that management of land. So if you've got an area that maybe you're thinking of doing a tree planting project on, that could be put forward to the market as a nature-based project, and the environmental credits generated by that may be sold, because the catchment market acts as an aggregator, so it can bring together multiple community projects to sell the credits. So alone, one small community project may not generate enough credits to sell direct to a corporate buyer potentially, but actually the market could aggregate them together with either some larger projects or more small projects to do that. The other way that communities might want to get involved is actually around influencing local planning and influencing some of the planning policies that are in place there to make sure that they're supporting biodiversity gain in the right locations. So if you're thinking more along the lines of the sort of policies that underpin a market like the Bristol Avon Catchment Market, that might be another way. There may also be nature-based projects that are being delivered through the catchment market, where there may be volunteering opportunities for local communities to get involved in establishing some of those projects. And some of those projects may also benefit local communities. So one of the Wiltshire projects that Wiltshire Wildlife Trust will be putting through the market as one of their own projects has an area in it where there's habitat being developed for local schools to use for educational purposes. Hopefully that answers Anna's question.
Great, thank you both. So there's also a question from Kelly Ann. Will your environmental credits be verified to the standard that they can be used for the Science-Based Target Initiative net zero targets?
Claire, do you want to do the next question as well?
Sure. So the next question was from Kaylee. Are you able to provide data to businesses who support the market so they can include measuring improvements in nature recovery against their own sustainability goals?
So Amy, 2 questions on data there, which is probably for you.
Yes, so obviously we will be providing, there's a number of different ways that we're providing data to businesses who are purchasing through the market. So we'll have an overall investment in nature report that the catchment market operator will deliver annually, which will have that very high level of how much investment has come in from businesses. But also we will be issuing businesses with statements on the credits that they've bought, so that they've got the information that they need to be able to report. In terms of the standards that we use, so the market, we only use standards that are actually already recognized as being sorry, words are escaping me slightly. They're sort of the most recognized standards. So for carbon, for example, we're using the Woodland Carbon Code. For biodiversity gain, we're actually developing our own standard, but that standard will meet the British standard for biodiversity gain. It's also being developed with Natural England and the local planning authorities to make sure that the standard that we use meets the regulatory requirements for biodiversity net gain, but also the biodiversity gain credits that are being generated can be used for voluntary purposes as well. But everything that we're doing is being developed to meet regulatory level standards, so that you know that even if you need voluntary credits for a voluntary target, they're very high quality. And so the biodiversity gain standard is being developed in line with the DEFRA metric and the guidance that came out recently through the consultation, and further guidance that we're expecting imminently. Nutrients, the nutrient standard that we're using is the one that's been developed for the regulatory market in Somerset. So we're matching to that standard. So again, that's been developed to the highest possible standard to meet HRA habitat regulations assessment level. So that's, yeah, we're using the best possible available standards. As new standards are more widely recognised and come, we'll look at those and assess them and decide whether they're appropriate to use.
So Amy, if a company is investing in the market, what information will they get back about the impact of that investment?
We can discuss that with them according to what their individual needs are, and that might well be quite specific. That will vary.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few more questions. Maybe I'll give you all of them and see if that works. So from Kelly, are you offering a carbon guarantee as part of the credits, as some other international credits do? From Tiziana, is there scope for a secondary market? And David has asked, how much investment are you hoping to raise overall for the project in this round?
Go on, Amy. Sorry, that was a lot of questions in one go.
Where would you like to start?
Okay, I'll have to take away the carbon guarantee. It's not the area of the market that so that's the carbon side of things is being managed by Entrade. So I would need to take that one away. My focus is very much on the biodiversity gain aspects, and unless you're able to answer that question.
You want to talk about market balancing?
Was that one of the questions? Sorry.
Well, I think so. I don't know what the carbon guarantee is either, because that's very much Entrade leading on carbon. But we are not going to be releasing all of the credits generated by any of our projects. So that if one of the biodiversity net gain projects, for instance, doesn't deliver the habitat requirements that we're expecting, we still have credits in reserve to make up for that. So I think it's the same on the carbon side, that if a project doesn't deliver what we're expecting on carbon, we have a stock of kind of risk security projects that will replace that carbon that's not being generated by that project. So I don't know whether that's the same as the carbon guarantee, but that's designed to make sure that a failed project doesn't mean that the buyer doesn't get what they paid for.
That's exactly right, Ian. The catchment market operator, so Entrade, will replace the project with an equivalent if that was required. But actually we've got quite stringent monitoring in place to monitor projects and to make sure that they are delivering what they say they will.
And the secondary market, Amy, we're excluding the ability for people to resell credits. Yeah.
Great. And then I think the other question from David was, how much investment are you hoping to raise overall for the project in this round?
So we've got 1.7 million to kick things off from the Green Recovery Challenge Fund, which will enable us to get a first tranche of projects in place, and then to sell the credits to reinvest back in the market. And we do have the financial model for all of that. I don't have it at my fingertips at the moment. We are also interested in talking to investors who are interested in putting finance into the credits. So we're talking to Bristol City Funds and potentially others about putting 1 or 2 million into the market to deliver more of those projects, to deliver more credits and then reinvest it back, and beginning to look at what return we might be able to offer to investors as we do that. But we're probably not quite at that stage yet, because we need to be running the market across the summer, seeing how that goes. It's very much a pilot stage, but we are interested in starting those discussions if people are interested in putting finance in.
Great, thank you, Ian. Okay, I think that was everyone's questions. So unless I see someone very quickly typing something away in the chat, I think we can draw it to a close. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my email address in the chat now. Just if anyone does want to get in touch with Ian or Amy to ask any more questions or to talk about any of this in more detail, please do get in touch with me. Oh, Anna's just asked, just wondering when you're piloting in Bristol.
Yeah, we've chosen the pilot areas that we have because and we've worked with Entrade, who did some mapping on where are the areas of land where it will be most beneficial for farmers and landholders to sell environmental credits rather than farming. So it will tend to be the more agriculturally marginal areas. And actually farmers could create some of these habitats and still farm them if that's compatible with that type of habitat. And we also overlaid that with where are the opportunities likely to be, as in where are housing developments likely to be taking place which need biodiversity net gain credits, and similarly where are the nutrient issues. So that map, the dark green areas on the map, show the areas where we think that the market will be most economically beneficial to landholders meeting the need, and the pilot areas we've chosen are on those areas. And as I said, probably not very well at the beginning when I was talking about the map, that doesn't preclude projects coming forward from other areas, and it doesn't preclude, certainly doesn't preclude buyers coming from anywhere, as Amy said. So I think it's easier, it's more straightforward, more in keeping with traditional conservation to do this on farms and agricultural land and in rural areas. There's a whole series of other questions which come around, and a whole other series of environmental services in urban areas which can make it more complicated. But as Amy said, if community groups are thinking about planting orchards or restoring grasslands or any of those things within Bristol, we can certainly look at putting those through the market. So do express an interest. And we are talking to Bristol City Council about how this whole thing can help them to operate and make sure that biodiversity net gain and carbon sequestration are achieved within the city. But it's early days on those conversations at the moment.
Great, thank you. And David's just asked, can the spillover from pure habitat development to expansion of regenerative agriculture? And he did say that Amy might have just answered this, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah, so we're not focused on regenerative agriculture as such. You know, actually we wanted to explore whether or not we could sell environmental services from agroforestry, but we don't have an appropriate standard that allows us to do that at the moment. Actually, we are focused on quite heavily on biodiversity gain and carbon credits at the moment, which means that we're probably looking at more tree planting projects and then grassland creation and so on, but that could be part of a regenerative model. Obviously you've got various codes in development. You've got the soil carbon code as well, so there's quite a lot for us to look at, but because this is a pilot, we're trying to be quite focused at the moment in what we're doing, but other things we would like to look at going forwards.
These are brand new markets, and we're actually probably world leading in trying to do these things together in one place. And we are working with Bristol Avon Rivers Trust on looking at how we can value improvements in rivers. We're working with the Wildlife Wetlands Trust on looking at how we value wetlands, but those standards haven't developed yet. So the idea is we start with carbon, which already has a market, and with biodiversity net gain, which is being developed by government, and we're helping to develop that and pilot those standards. And as we go on, we'll start to add in some of these other elements and a wider range of environmental services and credits.
Great, thank you both. Yeah, I feel it's super exciting that this is happening in our region. So thank you so much for your work on this. I think that is the last question. You'll have seen that Amy put the contact details in the chat, so you can go directly to them rather than having to come through me. And we will be putting a recording of this webinar on the partnership's YouTube channel. So if you have colleagues or anyone you want to share this with within your organization, you can do it that way. So thanks to both Ian and Amy, and thanks for you all to coming. I know you are out there, despite the fact that we can't see you. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.